And Chris, is it okay if we record this?
Yeah, please feel free to record. We'll make sure to post the presentation afterwards as well. All right, everyone. So this is a community meeting for Waterworks District 40, Shaver Springs, to discuss the proposed water and sewer fee rate increase that has been noticed to you guys. My name is Chris Bump. I'm the Special Districts Manager for the County of Fresno. And what that entails is not just Waterworks 40, but all the districts that we oversee as well. I have with me Sybil Luna. She's the analyst, specifically for Waterworks 40, as well as some other districts. And then we have Brett Rush with Supervisor Maxig's office as well, in case you have any questions more towards Supervisor's office. So, with that being said, I have a bit of a presentation which goes over some of the stuff that was discussed at the last community meeting, some of the stuff that was in the notice that you sent, as well as the rate study that was sent out with that, or I should say linked to it. So I want to go through this presentation. I know there's a lot of questions, and hopefully this answers some of those, and then afterwards we'll do more Q&A. So again, with that being said, today's topics, I'm kind of going to explain the need for the rate increase, how we got here, but also what we're doing to try to alleviate the costs with different funding options. I want to go over kind of the consequences or what happens if there is a majority protest. I know that's a question that's been asked, as well as what are the alternatives to being a county-maintained waterworks district. And then at the end, I also want to make sure, as part of the requirements, the process for Prop 218, to explain how to protest if you want to. So that being said, just see a little bit of background. I'm not sure how much you guys are familiar with. Waterworks District 40 is a special district that was formed in 1971 to provide community water and sewer service for the Shaver Springs subdivision. It contains 96 residential lots, and there's 69 of them that are connected for water and sewer service, as well as one out-of-district water user. So one of the key things to note about being a special district is that you're required to be self-sustaining. And the biggest thing that means is that the fees that you pay for your water and sewer service, those go to pay for Waterworks District 40. Those don't go anywhere else in the county to pay for any other thing other than those. And at the same time, you're supposed to not be using funds from other places, which means the board can't subsidize you with funding that's supposed to be going for something else. So I'm sure you've heard it a little bit from me if you were here before, or even in the study. The reason we're here is because there's been a lot of challenges, and it's really been the last 4 or 5 years. The inflation that's occurred in the last several years, as well as increased regulations that we've seen with your wells and the different contaminants within those, your system is not new. It has aging infrastructure that continues to cause additional maintenance costs, as well as rising utility rates, as you see, I'm sure, in your own utility rates as well. To really make that harder, you have a high per household cost due to the number of connections. So, it's a very extreme example, but you guys have 69 connections. City of Fresno has 500,000 residents. There's a certain economy of scale that goes along with that. And we even see that within our own special districts that we operate. We have 22 water systems, 11 wastewater systems. What you tend to find is the ones with the fewer residents do have a higher cost because there's less to share that cost with. And both of those first two, I should add, are issues across the board for all of our county-run districts. Inflation, labor cost, utilities, regulations, all of them are permitted and permitted and overseen by the state, and across the board we're seeing rises in costs there. More specific to Waterworks 40 is you guys have had a persistent challenge with water quality and supply. If you've been there for a little while, you know this. If you've been there for quite a while, you know this even more so. You've had multiple compliance orders over the year for contaminants that are in the groundwater. You have, especially now, secondary contaminants, which are manganese, which are more of a color and odor issue rather than a health issue. And then you've had 5 wells that have been decommissioned due to naturally occurring contaminants and or low water production. You guys aren't unique in that up here as well. There's different contaminants that different communities in this area sees, but you have had a lot of struggles to find quality, good quantity water. And we'll go over a little bit on how we're trying to address that and what we've done in the past as well. So the financial status of the system, the last O&M rate increase was in 2007. However, you did have a special assessment that was approved in 2014, and that was to pay back a state planning loan to basically seek out additional water sources. I'm sure some of you guys are aware, it didn't amount to a whole lot. We were able to get additional wells through the HOA, and some of that did lay the groundwork for future opportunities, but that's what that special assessment was for. The biggest issue we find ourselves in now is that the current financial snapshot of the district is not great. You're collecting significantly less revenue every year than the expenses of the district, to the tune of almost $80,000. And keep in mind that really that expenses number can fluctuate, especially in a district that has projects ongoing, that has rate studies ongoing, and that it's an aging system where a pump can go down and that can be $10,000 to $20,000 very quickly for the year. So due to the deficit spending in recent years, again, I'm going to really stress this. I see up there, it says the last increase was in 2007. This issue really came about in 2020, 21, and on. Up until that time, the district was maintaining itself fairly well with the combination of the rates that were there, the property taxes that go towards this from general property taxes, and then also the assessment that was done for that planning fund. So in the last several years, there's been deficit spending to the point where it's drained the reserve that were there to begin with, and it started accumulating unpaid charges to the county that now need to be paid back. So, I'm sure you guys have seen, there's a large balance of approximately $300,000. It does fluctuate. That now needs to be paid back to the county. Those were funds that the county basically covered the expenses on a temporary basis, knowing that it needs to be paid back down the road. And those were done because the alternative is to have a system failure. If we can't have funds to operate the system, we can't pay bills, we can't address maintenance issues. Potentially we can't do necessary regulatory things like sampling that would lead to additional violations and additional needs for the system. So hopefully you saw this in the notice that went out, in the discussions that we've had. This is the current proposed rate. Right now the water base fee is $49.53 with an overuse, we're at a usage fee that is included for the first 8,000, and then you have a usage fee after that. In consultation with the rate consultant that did the rate and general kind of discussions of rates in California, you guys, as well as other systems we operate who are going through this process, are moving away from that having a usage base or an initial allocation in your base fee. The reason is because courts don't see that as a fair distribution of costs for the water system. The reason being is that if someone used 1,000 gallons, they're going to pay the same as someone who used 8,000. And that's not appropriate in a system where you should be paying your fair share of the cost to operate a system. So the proposed rate that's happening is $85.54 per month, as well as a usage starting at your first usage of $23.67. You can see it broken down in here, and I believe that's also in the rate study. There's three components to it. There's the current operation of the system that you need right now, just to be sustainable. There's a portion that's going to paying back those charges that need to be reimbursed to the county. And then there's a board policy and just good practice that says that at the end of this 5-year period, which Prop 218 can be, you should have 50% of your 3-year average of your O&M. And so that's what that, and on the water side, $3.52 is building to. So at the end of this 5-year period, you have 50% of your O&M as a reserve. I will be perfectly honest, at the end of the day, you really should have more than that, and I told this to any system because you never know when a large item is going to have issues. Hopefully it doesn't happen anytime soon, but if you have to have a water tank replaced, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that, and you really want to make sure you have reserves available to address that because no one wants to be down a water solution.
Is it $23.67 per 1,000 gallons?
So it breaks down to a per gallon cost, But if you use 1,000 gallons, you'd be paying $23.67 for that 1,000. Multiply it by 5.
Then it'd be, with his base, it'd be $314 a month,
For
water and sewer.
5,000 gallons? 200.
Do you want to put my chart up?
So, let me go to the next one. This is the proposed sewer rate. Again, you're going from $25.53 per month to $110.99. You can see again the breakdown of what is the O&M portion, the repayment portion, and the reserve portion. And again, those were in the notices that you received. So the next portion I want to talk about is kind of what's been done funding-wise and what we're looking to do. So I want to go over what's been done so far. You know, the district has had state funding in different ways up to this point, dating back to the planning funds that were there. That was a low-interest loan. I know people want grants rather than loans, but low-interest loans still do serve a benefit. And then in my mind, more importantly, more recently, the county has received $1.2 million in funding from DWR, which is the Division of Water Resources of the state. And that's to address the ongoing well quantity and quality situation that we discussed a little bit. That project was recently awarded by the board at the last board hearing last Tuesday. And we do expect work to begin this summer and through this year. The goal there is to provide another new well. We anticipate having some additional money. We tried to get additional funds for a second well, however, we were denied by the state. So we're hoping to get the well and then find a use for the additional funds to either prepare plans for another well down the road, or if there's a treatment component that's needed. I do want to stress that is a big benefit to the district, because at the end of the day, you do need additional water supplies. And if you didn't have a grant, that would eventually fall to the residents to drill a well and provide that. And again, as we said, it has to be self-sustaining, so those funds would have to come from the residents within the district. So one additional thing, I don't know, I think this is probably a little bit more under the radar, but special districts did get ARPA funds, American Recovery Plan Act funds. And what we use those for on one of these projects is to replace our meter heads, our water meters. Previously, all of your water meters were older and they had to be read manually. They had to have a staff go and actually read the readout. We've replaced those to where now they're unfortunately not cellular, which we wanted to do. You guys may or may not know this. You don't have great cell service up in this area. So what we have done is we have we have meter heads that now staff can drive through the community and pick up the reads like that instead of having to go to each individual home. The goal there is to save you guys staff time related to our water billing process, and just make it a lot more simplified. So you may have heard. Ideally, I want to get through this, then we'll do them at the end.
How long do you think?
We're getting closer.
You got questions.
No, of course.
Okay, go ahead.
So one of the biggest things that we talked to the CAC with, Supervisor Maxim was in our meeting spoke as well, is there's a state safer funding program that is actually for direct operation and maintenance costs to help subsidize residents' rates. We were able to successfully do this in one of our other systems in the past, and we're looking to apply for that funding. However, there's three key components to it. In order to qualify, a system has to be designated as a disadvantaged community with the state, which Waterworks 40 is, so you meet that qualification. You have to have ongoing compliance orders, which Waterworks 40 does, so you meet that qualification. But you have to have active water rates that exceed 2.5% of the district's MHI for the year. And right now, with the
What's
water, median household income.
Okay.
Sorry. You do not meet that with your current water rate. So we have talked to the state. It seems like you guys are a very strong candidate with no actual guarantee that what would happen. But if this rate goes into place, you would exceed the 2.5% of median household income, and you'd be eligible at that point for us to apply for funding and, again, be a strong candidate for that funding. And what that would do is we would enter into an agreement with the state to help subsidize the funds, there would be claims that have to go, and we would get funding that then goes as a credit against your water bill to lower it to a more affordable level. One thing to keep in mind, unfortunately, is this is just for water side. There is no active O&M funding subsidies for the wastewater side. However, one thing that is still very new, it's still in the kind of planning phase of the state, is SB 350, which was passed in 2023 to address water and sewer affordability. And it's with the Water Resources Control Board to create statewide assistance program, and it aims to help low-income households pay water and wastewater bills. Again, that's still in the state's kind of implementation process. We are always looking at funding. That's kind of how we got some of the funding that we do have, and we will continue to look at that for, again, several districts, including your own. If it's anything like the SAFER program, I do think there's a likelihood that you guys would apply with the proposed rates. You have, with the rates you have right now, there wouldn't be any threshold for affordability of those rates. So another topic that has been brought up and asked about is that there is past due bills associated with customers of this system. So we do want to get right out ahead of that. I'm guaranteeing that's at least one of the questions. So for the January and February billing cycle, there's 70 accounts in the district that were billed for a total of $25,021.89. That is the bills that went out for everyone, including the active bills for that billing cycle. Of the amount that was billed, 14,500 of that was past due. So basically 10,000 is your normal bills, 14 and a half is past due, and 36 accounts, half the district, had an outstanding balance, with 22 of those being behind one billing cycle, so they might have just been late and now they're catching up. I will say that's not too uncommon. However, there are 5 accounts that are delinquent by 6 or more cycles, which is over a year of bills. And I think that's what a lot of people were focused on, and understandably so. To give a little bit of an explanation of that, we, during COVID, from about 2020 to 2023, the state had a water shut-off moratorium where we weren't able to shut anyone off for non-payment. An issue throughout a lot of our systems, and I believe throughout the state as a whole, was that there was certain people who took advantage of that to basically say, I'll pay when you come talk to me. Since that time, the unfortunate reality is that we have had delay getting back to that due to staff turnover and getting back trained on it. However, there is also new state regulations that require us to have policies in place to have a shut-off policy, which we had through our ordinances, but also to have a policy in place to ensure everyone has the opportunity to create a payment plan rather than having water shut off. We are now fully staffed, we're more trained up, and we're in the review process of that policy. That when it does go into place, the key thing for a payment plan is that you're going to have up to 12 months to pay down what is due while still staying current with your bills. And in the instance where you fail to keep up with your payment plan or fail to pay your bills, your water does get shut off. So those bills will continue to be there, and if they pay, those will continue to accrue. And then once we get that shut-off policy in place, we'll be notifying residents. I do anticipate it going back into effect in July, with shut-offs and 48-hour notices being more in the September, as it's been 60 days at that point. And we'll be encouraging residents to obviously pay their bills or create a payment plan if it is an amount that they're not able to do in a quick manner. But the biggest thing there is all that past due bills, those are associated with that account, with that customer, and they stay with them. The one thing that I'll also note is when you have past due bills or delinquent bills, it doesn't show up in the expenses of your district. What it does is it shows up in a lack of expected revenue in your district. So in the instance where we were up to date $15,000, what you'd see is the district itself would owe $15,000 less. So another big question that we have been asked in your system and in other systems is what happens if a majority protest does occur? In your case, we'll go into a little bit more. A majority protest would be 36 protest letters from individual properties being submitted and counting on the day of the board. So The immediate need would be, we're going through this process again. Because your system still isn't fully funded, and we still need to get to the point where your system is fully funded. So we would be going through this system, we'd go through this process again. We would have the rate consultant update the rate study that was provided at an additional cost for their work on the study. And in the meantime, you guys have continued building more of a deficit that would then need to get paid back in the rate. I'm not saying this in any way to be confrontational or anything, that's just the reality of the situation.
Can you go over that again?
Yeah, so,
I don't believe I heard you say you're threatening to cut people off if we protest.
no, not at all.
Read it. Tell me.
So everyone has the right to protest, and we'll go into that a little bit later. If there is a majority protest, the reality of the situation is the Waterworks District 40 is still underfunded, and we can't continue to operate that way. So we'd be starting a new Prop 218 process with a new proposed rate. And the reality of the situation is that new proposed rate would need to pay for costs associated with amending the rate study, with staff time to go through this process, and then also continue deficit spending in the meantime. Those all are still costs to your system that would need to get paid back. And then in the meantime, we would also have a meeting with the community, because the county would be forced to scale back or stop operations to the extent that we can. That might be reduced service levels, deferred maintenance if possible, potential regulatory violations because of the inability to provide staff to do certain work. And then there's the very real potential of an eventual system failure, or one thing that has been theorized as a possible path would be that the system has to be taken over by the state as a failing system and kind of enter receivership. I say that because it's been brought up, and that's the way it would go. That process would get vetted through county council, would be discussed with the state. But again, at the end of the day, if you don't have a funded system, you don't have an operational system. And I should add too, in the event of a lot of these and the alternatives I'm going to show, whoever takes over the system, if it's not the county, they still need to be operationally whole as well. If it is the state taking over, the reality of the situation is unfortunately that in a situation like that, they don't have the same Prop 218 rules, and they can establish what rate is needed to fund the system. It's been discussed, I think, before, and Shaver Springs itself was previously not a county-operated system. There are private water companies that in certain cases are contracted to operate and maintain the system, and they may come with higher operating costs. A lot of times, some of the ones that have been looked at in other systems, I don't think they've ever been looked at here, they're public utilities who are overseen by the Public Utility Commission. In my understanding is public utilities, they propose rates to the Public Utility Commission. There is an opportunity for comments, but at the end of the day, those rates are decided and set by the Public Utility Commission. The other is a mutual water company where residents would assume direct responsibility for the system. This is what was here before, as my understanding. It eliminates a decent chunk of overhead costs that are associated with someone like the county and even some private water companies. It gives local control, but it requires a really strong organizational structure and ability to generate sufficient funding, which I think, again, my understanding is that was the issue in the past. And that would potentially involve significant initial investments because you have to actually reform it. In this case, you have an HOA, so it might be there. I don't know what the real interest in that one is, but I want to make it known. And then I want to get to kind of just the legal requirement of it. I want to make sure that you guys are aware, it's in the notice, but what the protest process is. So if you disagree with the proposed increase, you submit a protest letter to the county. Written protests, all they need to include are the address of your property, or the APN number, the assessor's parcel number, which you can find on your notice you received. A written statement stating that you protest or disagree with the proposed rate. You don't need to go into any detail. And then your handwritten signature. I believe it does have to be handwritten. And then you have to send that to, they have to be addressed, mailed, or hand-delivered before the close of the board public protest hearing, which is June 24th. And they have to go to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors, Water District 40 protest hearing, 2281 Tulare Street, room 301. I want to make sure that you guys see this. It's in your notice. If that is not where you send or sent your protest, it is not a valid protest. That is where it needs to end up going. It has to be delivered. It can't be postmarked that morning. It has to actually be there.
Now, we didn't even get those.
I have some extras if you print off some.
Yeah, we do have extras, and we can discuss that too. But definitely let us know if that's the case. Additional information is written protests may be submitted by property owners or tenants currently receiving service from Waterworks District 40. Keep in mind that only one valid protest per parcel will be counted. So if you have multiple people living in your home and you each send one, at the end of the day, that only counts as one protest. And then again, a majority of protest occurs if more than 50% of the parcels, which in this case is 36, submit valid protests. This might be optimistic of me, but if I sway anyone or make you understand the necessity of this, if you have submitted a protest and decide that you want to rescind that protest, you have to submit a second letter to the same address saying you wish to rescind or withdraw your initial protest, and those would end up balancing out when we open them and county council reviews them. So again, some information, the public protest hearing is on Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. It is at the Fresno County Hall of Records. The address is there. This is in downtown Fresno. The board meeting starts at 9:30. That does not mean that your item will be heard at 9:30. It will go through the board calendar, the board agenda, until it gets to that point. You'll see myself give a presentation to the board, and then they'll open it for public comments, that's when you guys can comment if you were there and would like to. And by the time they close that public comment is when the protests need to be given to the clerk of the board. So what happens next? Talked about this a little bit, but if there is a majority protest, then the rates cannot be adopted by the board, and the district will continue to face a funding shortfall for their O&M as well as continuing to accrue a deficit. We would hold a public meeting to discuss immediate cost cutting and potential impacts. What that looks like in terms of what we can truly scale back is to be determined, but it is very likely that it would mean there would be no maintenance unless it's absolutely necessary, and at a certain point, that would even be, I don't know what the situation is. So if there is no majority protest, which means there is less than 36 protests, the board can adopt the proposed rates, and they would go into effect July 1st, and the first time you get a bill that would show those charges would be in the bills you receive in September of 2025. So, I think I got like a couple more. So a couple things I want to reiterate. The county does not profit from Waterworks District 40. Everything that you pay in fees goes to the Waterworks 40 fund and is used for Waterworks 40 services. Currently you have a lack of funds. When you do have funds, again, those stay in the same one, and when maintenance costs arise, or if your O&M starts to creep up and you need to go into the reserves, that is what that is there for. It doesn't go into other systems, it doesn't go into other programs from the county, it stays for Waterworks 40. Again, I've said it, but rejecting the rate does not eliminate the need. You have a funding shortfall. That is the reality of the situation. If you protest the rate and there's a majority protest, you continue to have a funding shortfall. And then state actions may be more costly and eliminate local input. That path that I discussed with state receivership, it is a general thing that is out there. How it works for the county, we've never had to go through that situation, and we need to go through county council and state. But like I mentioned, my understanding of what I've seen before is if you go down that, it can become more costly, and you really lose all local control. And then also, like we talked about, transitioning to a private or mutual water company, it can be an alternative. But I would think very long and hard about that. I understand that the county has its own faults and the cost is not something that's appealing, but a lot of times what I've seen people get into is they go into that business because a handful of people were really willing at that time to run it, and as time goes on, those people move or they lose interest, they get burnt out, and then you start having issues with those systems. So those are the key takeaways. I apologize, my presentation was...
You guys have a large turnover, and that's part of our problem.
Yeah, so you have seen turnover in the county. Your last analyst, fortunately, was here for I think about 6-7 years, and that was a very stable situation. Luckily, Sybil is your analyst, and she was able to learn a lot from Jennifer before she left. I myself have been in this position for quite a while. Mike Fine, who some of you might know is the water operator, has been up in Shaver and the surrounding systems such as yours. We've had situations where there's a lot of turnover in wastewater certified staff. We've done certain things to fix that, making it so that people with wastewater certifications can come in and have more benefit to be here. But the nature of any business is that there is going to be turnover and there is going to be training costs associated with that. We're just trying to minimize that.
Can we go person by person? I've got 5 things I need to address and go through them, have you answer them, and then just keep going rather than hopscotch all over.
I'm fine with however you guys want to do it.
It was just brought to my attention that by a utility employee, that there was a California Water and Wastewater Arrearment Payment Program during COVID. Over almost $1 billion was provided for relief of communities for unpaid water and wastewater bills. Did the county tap into any of that to help our situation?
We
And
did
how much?
utilize the rearage program. I don't have it offhand.
Okay, this is one thing I'm adamant, and this isn't on you. I think we're all adamant. We have no numbers when we hit our reserve, when we depleted it. Any high school class could supply a graph chart that shows when we became insolvent and what date that was, so we can see how it went, address by address. That there needs to be some accounting for things like just that. How much did you guys get? Can we see where that was applied? How much did we get for that? Are there other districts facing the same problems?
How many districts are getting 300% increase?
400 if you count water usage.
400 with water usage.
So a couple different things there.
Yeah.
We can always, one of the things we want to do is work more closely with the residents, with the CAC. We used to have a much more routine community meeting every year, have more frequent meetings with the CAC, especially as we went through a lot of projects. We do need to get that back up and going. COVID did make it harder for
Sure.
community meetings and has been harder to get to it. The fund balance started you started eating into your revenues in the 2021 fiscal year. Part of that is because that's ongoing cost to pay that assessment back to the state, as well as I believe that's around the time that you guys purchased the HOA well. And then they really started going down more in fiscal year 21-22. And the first time that you were dipping negative was in, I believe it was March 2023.
Okay, can we all receive that? Mark?
Yeah.
March of 2023.
Because,
It's over how many districts are having this.
Yeah, so we have 130 special districts, 22 water and 11 wastewater.
we can do
Uh,
that.
This year alone, we're doing 4 Prop 218s, including your own. We had one passed for Waterworks 37, which is actually a water system that's right down the road here.
Like Nancy Grace, tell us how many, is it 5 or 10?
The majority of our systems are in a position where they recently had or need a Prop 218 increase. Because again, these costs are not localized to your system. Labor costs are across the board. For any system that we deal with, those costs are up.
I think maybe just sticking on to how you guys are coming up with the number that we have to make up. I
Yeah.
think having a proper accounting, I think everyone understands the needs of a growing system and how
Yeah.
big the system needing maintenance going forward. But how did you determine 300,000?
Yeah, that goes back to the true operating cost of the system. So whenever the county had to upfront the money to pay for a repair, or in a lot of the cases, it's paying for labor costs associated with the county so that a repair could be made and invoice paid, those are all the costs that amount to
I think
the
it would
amount
be
paid
really
back.
great to see all
Yeah.
of those
Correct.
totals, because if you guys got a number, this
Yeah.
should be should have been a screen up here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and at the end of the day,
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. We want to see the
It
money.
has accounted to about 80 to 100,000 a year, going up and down based on the maintenance cost of those years.
If you take your car to a mechanic and you go pick it up and he says, well, it's $3,000, and we say, what'd you do? Well, we did some stuff in the.
Yeah, that's what we feel like, right?
Yeah.
So how come we
Yeah.
didn't get special funds to put in the meters? Because why are we fronting, why are you taking that money for putting in the meters on us?
That was
Because
a,
that in other cities and other special districts, that is paid from the county or out of special funds, not out of our payments.
so
Why is it
the
not?
water meter project was grant funded. That didn't get paid for by the district.
Nothing, no part of that.
No.
Can you show us that it didn't?
Yeah, what did we spend the money?
Somebody else, where did the money come
Yeah,
from?
where'd it go?
Correct, yeah, there was ARPA funding that was approved by the board
You just
for,
said they don't use money from other places for our district.
Right.
that was a grant funded project.
So, that he brought that up. At the beginning, you were talking about what a special water district is, and one of the policies is we cannot receive money
Correct.
that's to go elsewhere. But we've been receiving money from the county general fund, so isn't that money supposed to be used elsewhere in the county, but yet we've
So
received it?
that is something that should not happen, which is why we're in this situation where we need to have it paid back. They basically fronted that, it wasn't earmarked for other programs, and with the understanding that that money does need to go back. But it is an issue, which is why we're here, because it can't continue to
So
go that
then
direction.
why did it take this long for us to do
Yes.
this much?
Yeah, so we sought state assistance for, technical assistance for this rate study, because rate studies are not cheap. We applied for that in 2022. The nature of funding in general, it does take a long time to get it. We received that in 2023, and it's been a process to get to the point where we're bringing a item
Aren't
here.
residents required to be notified of these steps though?
That we're in debt? Yeah.
You know, there is an annual budget that does go, there's audited financials. I will say we understand that the financials for the county are not easy to read or really intuitive in either way, in any way. And we're working with our business office and our financial side to work on the transparency and ease of use.
But isn't
of
there an
those.
obligation to notify us of
A debt.
your reserve is going away?
Mhm.
Oh, you're now insolvent. If this has been 3 to 5 years, there's a lot of opportunity for us to be
And
notified,
you're tacking an interest on a loan
which
we
is an
didn't
insult.
even know about.
Yeah. Or we didn't agree to. Yeah.
Why so long? The minute we went to zero, we should have been notified.
And that's one of the things we need to know from Nathan. This is years in arrears,
Well,
and now we're paying the
And
consequences.
Nathan Massage at the last meeting did mention that this should have been a red flag.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah,
I mean, anybody would know after 18 years, there should have been a rate increase.
well, again, I would point out that you guys were in a pretty good financial situation up until about 4 years ago.
Then where were you 4 or 5 years ago?
So you didn't
I
really
didn't
need
even
one
live
until that
here.
point. Yeah.
I wouldn't have bought.
We wouldn't have bought.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's a real serious thing too.
My escrow never mentioned
And
it
I'm
was a
not
debt.
picking on long-term residents, I'm not trying to get out of for
Nobody ever
long-term
mentioned
residents.
that we had a
But I'm telling you point blank, it is highly illegal to sell a house to me or to her or someone that's just been here a month that has this debt accrued on them. Do we have any accounting to show address per address? You moved in a month ago, that debt is not gonna fall on you? Because that's illegal. My real estate agent just confirmed it. I've got attorneys I'm working on that don't think this is a legal situation.
You can't come back on me for your bill.
AT&T
Yeah.
can't come back
No.
on a prior owner.
No,
So why would it?
It's like me paying for water, I didn't even use.
Yeah,
Exactly. And
Exactly.
water that is
We were
not
here.
even good for a garden. Look at my fingernails. I started this daily.
yeah. Oh, they're
So, sorry, I'm going to bring it back up here for a moment. We do understand a lot of the concerns, especially how we got here. We need to do
But
better.
this is
do
the
you
county.
guys have an answer for property owners that just bought in? Whether they
You know,
are
the-
gonna be responsible for that
The
300,000?
county needs to
It is the
take
system as a
responsibility.
whole that's paying back that amount.
That's not
I
fair,
understand.
it's not legal.
You can do the calculations
Yeah.
to exclude
Yes.
certain people. I have a similar position as you in civil for PG&E, so I do this on the daily. So, I mean, it's not exactly the funnest thing to do to calculate, but it can be done.
And it has to be done.
Yeah.
It's legal.
We don't need an analyst,
Yeah, and we have talked to county council about it, because I think that is one of the questions that we had.
The county-
And the way that it's being done now, they didn't have anything outright wrong with it. If you have something along those lines of like legal opinion, please let us know.
Oh, we will.
And we'll include that.
We will.
In discussion of the water quality, the reality of the situation is that we're in the position where we have to fund the water system as it is. We understand that there is other things that still have to go.
$100,000
Yeah.
debt,
Mhm.
the maintenance is being done. If these things are being done, then I don't think the system should be in such dire straits.
Exactly.
It is an aging, and it goes back to, one, it is an aging system, so in the last several years, there has been higher than typical maintenance costs associated with pump failures and different repairs that were needed. But a lot of it comes down to, it's not necessarily tied to the system itself, it's the labor costs associated with it, it's the utility costs associated with it.
But that doesn't answer why we're getting charged an extra and we're gonna pay back for work that hasn't been done. You guys haven't done anything to make this work my while.
What
If I
maintenance
had
has been
water,
done?
I would.
We're continuing to operate this system, providing maintenance as needed when a pump goes down. We're under, guidelines for how we operate the water and wastewater system from the state. Those requirements have continued to be met. And the reality, I keep saying this, these are costs that were associated with running the system that now need to be paid back to have the system where it should be as full, and then also to pay as it's going forward. So I know you've had your hand up for a while.
I got two questions. When we pay off the deficit, does the $600 go away?
That was my question.
This 600.
The $600 per treatment
Okay.
that you're charging us?
Yeah, so the way Proposition 218 regulations work is we have to look at a 5-year period. And so that's why at the end of this 5 years, you have to have all the district whole in terms of what it owes, and you have to have a reserve in place. In a 5-year time, we would need to be coming back with another rate, and ideally what it shows is that the district is whole with a strong reserve, and that amount can be dropped off, and a new rate that's appropriate for the system at that time is put in place.
Okay. And my second question.
If you're doing really well before the 5 years, we can always come back as in between. But at the end of the day, we need to get to that point before we can really consider a new rate.
And my second question is that $600, we are still getting billed for our water usage above that, correct? So some people may have an $800 bill or a $700 bill by the time they get done using their water.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Now, how much is 1,000 gallons for a typical family usage? I don't know.
the water.
Clovis reported 105 gallons per person in 2012. Per day. 6,000 gallons, so that's 12,000
1,000
gallons.
gallons is nothing.
Yeah.
So the average use for Waterworks 40 is 4,000 gallons per 4,000 gallons per month. And I will say you guys are among the lowest users that we have because of your ongoing water quality concerns. You guys have been a fantastic district. Yeah.
Insane.
We have to buy water. I mean, I have to do a glass of
We can't even boil
water.
pasta without water.
I understand the water quality. Right, and there still needs to be work done, especially, again, that the grant funded project that we're moving forward on is to get a new well that is ideally less contaminants as well as more quantity.
So none of our tax dollars from our homes, from the county assessor, none of that money goes to the county for our water.
So there is a portion of your revenues.
So you get paid from our property tax from the county assessor assessing our taxes, right?
Yes, so let me answer, please. There is a portion of revenues for Waterworks 40 that come from your property taxes. That amount is on the assessor. I don't know what formula they use. And that amount,
Our county assessor has raised our taxes every year since 5 years. I don't know how that we sit in here and you say we are not under income, like Mendota or like Fireball or like Kermit.
so a couple things that I want to make sure to answer. The revenue that is required from Waterworks 40 funds for water and sewer service, that is in addition to the property taxes that come in to help with the district. So that is accounted for already in the rates that are being proposed. And I mentioned funding. I'm sorry, let me please answer. So the funding that we're looking for in terms of O&M subsidy, we have stated one of the requirements is you have to be a disadvantaged system under the state. You are. That is already, we mentioned that. And that'll make you qualify, but you have to have you can't have the water rates you have now. You have to have a water rate that exceeds 2.5% of your median household income.
Which is what?
Your median household income, I believe, is around 60,000 for Waterworks 40.
How do you know that? You can't prove how much my household makes compared to their household or her household or
So
theirs.
that is based on the state's information.
Show me that, and because I guarantee my household makes less.
Yeah, we can provide the link to the state's safer dashboard, and that shows information regarding Waterworks District 40 as a water system. Yes.
So it seems to me that we're at this point where we're negative on the balance. I don't think there's anybody in this room that would argue that we've won a good system. And I heard you state something, and I think you glossed over it, but I think it's pretty important. So you're proposing we take this increase to show once we can apply for the safer program, a grant, that we're above that 2.5. And that would drive the cost back down, crossing our fingers.
Crossing papers.
Crossing fingers.
Yeah.
Could you just give us the song and dance on the safer program and what, at minimum, could we expect?
Yeah, so again, I utilize the Safer Dashboard. That's the state's kind of site that gives information on all state water systems. That's what shows the median household income for the district, and it shows that it's a failing system, so it has violations. So based on that, I'm going a little bit, pulling the numbers off memory, but the median household income is approximately $60,000. And what that means is that an affordable rate of 2.5%, I believe it came out to about $140, $150 a month. And that is your in. That's base and usage. And so, what I've seen from another district that was successful is, and what I've seen in talking to them, the goal is that we would be applying for funding to bring it from whatever the actual bills are down to that range across the entire district.
Right, so we have to show income from invoicing at a higher rate for us to
Correct.
qualify for this grant.
Yeah, so there's certain components that are an expense that you can claim against it. Sampling, labor cost, paying back debt is all things that can be reimbursed against it. Again, down to that portion that it would be affordable.
Is that why you guys have got to that $300,000 number to help get us closer to the state program?
Not the intention, but it does make it to where it is
I feel like
affordable.
that's an ill intent.
That's not the intention.
To improperly bolster a number that you're able to produce these. There's a spreadsheet that shows the fees
Yeah.
that come up to $300,000.
How'd you get to that?
PG&E cost, labor cost.
What
Where is the county going to take responsibility for their lack of notice
Exactly.
and involvement with the community so we
Exactly.
can reduce our consumption at least?
Yeah.
You gave us the county gave us no recourse, no way to move left or right. You guys turned your back on this community.
Yeah, you took a 5-year problem and you're putting on the current people that live here. What is the county gonna take on this?
So at the end of the day, this is a Waterworks 40 system that has to be contained within Waterworks 40.
Is there gonna be a document before this hearing that we have that justifies this?
It shows power consumption, labor.
Yeah.
Because that would help. $20 every single month from every person saved here would certainly help.
Yeah,
Even just that.
we can provide the numbers showing what was spent, where
Thank
those
you.
negative charges are, and where you see as the cash balance goes down and then into the negative.
When can we get that before we reject this proposal?
Yeah, we can provide that to The typical way we do it is provide it to the CAC and have them distribute it.
Thank you.
The reason being is because that is the more affordable route to go.
Okay.
Who is responsible for the accounting error? And did they lose their job? Are they still working?
So,
Over $400,000 in error?
not accounting errors. Again, those are the actual costs of the system.
Why weren't we billed?
Yeah, appropriately.
You're obviously sending us notices now for every meeting, 30 days before deadlines, but the last 5 years, nothing has been disclosed.
Well,
Why?
I can't speak to what hasn't been done. I can say we're going to work to improve it. We'll get the information that shows how the district's finances. Again, those are available as well,
Awesome,
but I'll
'cause
get
we-
them in a little bit more easy.
Right now, we're all rejecting this because
And
we haven't seen
truthfully,
numbers.
the interest should be, there should not be interest.
Yeah, and I know one of the things was interest.
Interest on a loan you didn't know about.
I want to make it very clear. It's the county treasury kind of pull rate, and when you have funds in your account, you're getting the same interest rate as like a gain, and then when you're negative, you're paying it. So historically, until you guys went into the negative, you were accruing interest at the same rate by utilizing that same pool.
But when are we,
I'd have to go back and check what it is currently. It does change quarterly. I think it's 2.5.
I got a question, if as of your last billing, 51% weren't paying, what the hell do you think's gonna happen when they get a $600?
Yeah.
I really think this
So
is,
that was kind of goes with my question is, so were these rates calculated on 100% of residents paying a bill for paying one
Yes.
time?
Yeah.
Or was it based on the rate of who's actually paying?
We have to assume we're receiving payments at the appropriate rate.
I mean, if that's the case, with
yeah.
less than 50% people paying on time, we're not gonna hit the spike.
Yeah, so when we set the rate, we can't look at affordability of the system, we can't look at demographics of the system, we can't look at if people may or may not pay. We just have to look at the balance that we need this much revenue, and because these are the expenses of the system.
So
The
clear-
51%, sorry.
Yeah,
The
no.
51%, I do want to again stress, that is basically one pay period or one payment cycle behind.
But there was still
I think there was 6 or however many it was that are much further behind.
But I mean, you are prepared to see that number.
Yeah, and you know, we will have the shut-off policy back in place starting in July is the intention. And if you, the way that works is once you're 60 days delinquent, after the policy goes into place, you'll receive a 15-day notice. If you still don't pay, you'll receive a 48-hour notice on your door. If you still don't pay or set up a payment plan after that, your water will be shut off.
So then all the hours that county workers go into coming and putting these notices on our doors, or emailing or mailing us things, is that money to pay them come out of our fund?
Yeah, so it's anytime that any county staff works on a topic that is Waterworks 40, it has to get charged to Waterworks 40.
Okay.
Sorry.
So this first question is partly rhetorical, because I know our water is orange and stains things, but I want to hear, what is wrong with our water?
Yeah, so you have there's different contaminants. There's primary contaminants, which are health and safety issues, and there's secondary contaminants, which are odor and color. So you have, I believe, historically it's been uranium and gross alpha. That's the primary contaminant that you've had a violation for a significant amount of time. You get a well that's clear of it for a while, and then it starts leaching into it. It's a naturally occurring contaminant, and to the point where, I think as we mentioned earlier, you've had 5 wells have to go offline because of either poor quality or poor quantity.
Okay.
Manganese, which is the main one that you guys have seen, the orange, that's a secondary contaminant. You guys are incredibly high. It's been in just about every well that we've had up there, and it just kind of gets worse. The idea is that the new well would have it lower.
Thank you. The purpose of increasing our bills is so that we will have a new well and I'm asking, you can answer me, hold on. So that we will have a new well so that our water will not have high manganese that's turning everything orange?
So the proposed rate is to operate the system basically as is, with the wells that are there, with the needs that are there. The $1.2 million in funding that we received as a grant, again, as a grant, not at the cost of the community, that's to drill a new well with the minimal intention of having more water quantity.
So the purpose of increasing our bill is solely
The system as is now.
to pay past due, so
And-
that we're not past due.
So a
So that
component,
in 5 years,
Can you go
we're
back to
not
the-
past due.
so there's a component of the water and the wastewater that is that repayment, that's to pay the past due. The non-water O&M or the operating and maintenance, that's the cost to run the system regardless. If you had a clean slate starting now, you would have a considerable increase either way.
What we need is we need service records and how many hours the guy comes every day, what he fixed, what he maintained, how many pumps they changed, what pipes they fixed. Did they flush the well? Did they clean out the tank? Did they do anything to make anything more besides drive up here and go, oh, there's water in it, cool, on to the next one?
How much for
We
power?
need
How much for
records that
labor?
show what they've
And
done.
Wilmington
and
has it
why
broken down
all of a
different
sudden we're
categories.
5 years, 3 years later at $300,000.
What changed in our dynamic that we went insolvent?
It's like, yeah, like how did it go? You know, the guy came up and said, okay, we have shitty water, okay, we'll ask for a grant. Okay, we come up and do it again the next day, everything's cool, whatever, the pump's not working, let's fix the pump. It costs however many man hours to come up here and do the work, to do the maintenance. That should be on a spreadsheet somewhere, on a service report that says this is what they did daily. They come in, they gotta fill out records, that's a lot. What they do, they came in, they looked at it, they come and they have to do the same thing with the sewer plant. They gotta come in and check the oxygen, the bugs, whatever the hell's in there that does all their things, they gotta do all that stuff. And that's why it costs so much to be certified to do that crap. So it's pretty simple. We need to know where the money went, who did it, how long it took, and if we owe money, we owe money. We'll figure it out. But it should have been said, like 2 years ago, hey, we're kind of screwed up. Let's raise it up $20. Okay, we're a little even, and it should have went, okay, we'll pay you $200, and then we'll pay you $250, and then we'll get to $300. But it shouldn't just go from what we're paying now to $600.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. That is wrong.
Understood. Sorry, you had a question
You guys
back.
have the same thing. I mean, I don't
Just to clarify what you said earlier, the 5-year plan is based on perfection. So really on a 10-year plan, if people don't pay, or if you have a mass exodus of people selling their homes for rock bottom
Which we
prices,
can't sell now.
that
Because
means
now I
whoever's
have to
left
disclose.
is somehow gonna have to make up the difference or keep paying for a longer period of time, is that correct?
So it goes back to what we can do legally with Prop 218 regulations. We can only look at a 5-year period, and we have to show
Okay,
a
but
funded
common
system at
sense,
that.
you have common sense, you tell me that that's a fantasy land plan, correct? That is not gonna happen unless every single person stays, every home is filled, and everybody's paying their bill on time. If that does not happen, that number, none of those numbers are right. Is that correct?
There's, the actual revenue and the actual expenditures are only going to be known as they occur.
Exactly. So in other words, for every home that's not occupied, those costs are not being covered. Every home that doesn't pay, they're not being covered. So this is all nonsense. It's just a fantasy land perfect plan, best case scenario, which means it's probably going to be significantly worse than what we're being shown here. And we still be.
Is the county responsible for notifying people regularly, for giving us honest, detailed information about the system that we are paying for? Yes or no?
Yeah,
Is
so
the county required to do
we have an annual budget that is goes to
Who
the board.
oversees that it happens? I have not received a notice. No one here has received notices. So we know that, right? Obviously not your personal fault. However, is there no implication of failure to provide notice? A medical provider can only go back and back bill for a certain amount of time.
Right.
If I made a mistake and didn't bill someone for services 10 years ago, I can't go back that far. Why does that not apply here? Why is there no responsibility that the county is willing to take
Yes,
for failure to provide
exactly.
adequate notice?
Well, and
follow
to add to
procedures?
that, I hear a rumor, I won't say who, I was told the other day that one of our people went to the county 10 years ago roughly and said, you're not updating our payment, and was told something to the effect of, it would cost too much to go through and update it. 10 years ago, we went to the county and said, help us out.
It can't be.
And 10 years ago,
18
you
years.
shut us on, and now we're paying for it. That is out of control.
So
That should not fall.
the way Proposition 218 is worked,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I think you should, cause that's not my
yeah, it's not my fault. Yeah.
They used it.
yeah.
May I ask about your chart? So, operating and maintenance is $142 for water and sewer.
Yeah.
You don't have the sewer. It's
I'll believe it.
Okay. The reserves, what is that? That is to
The
pay
reserves
forward,
is
for forward,
to
right?
build up to that 50% reserve
Got it.
amount.
What, the repayment, is
That's
that?
to pay back that amount that needs to get back.
What about the money per gallon? Where is that?
Yeah, so the way that the rate works is there's components, there's costs that are fixed costs.
Uh-huh.
So basically, if no one turns on a tap, we still need to maintain the system and pay to a certain level. And so that's where the base comes from. The usage component, that is all the variable costs. So
what?
if you don't use water, our PG&E bill's
Okay,
less.
I
because-
understand that, but where is that money gonna go? Is it gonna go towards past payment? What is it going to?
That goes towards the variable cost of the O&M for the system.
But O&M is covered up there.
The non-variable costs of the O&M. So think of O&M in two categories.
Right.
Fixed cost, it's going to happen either way,
Yeah.
and then variable cost, it's going to depend on your water.
Yeah.
So your whole bill goes towards Waterworks District 40 to pay both of those costs together.
Because that's where you're killing it, is in that usage.
That puts us over
I have never-
400% increase.
I've never seen a utility that doesn't have a base,
Have you had a chance
Say
to
what?
look at the recent?
that doesn't have a base.
It was posted on
This
the
does
website?
have-
Like we had 8,000 gallons, that was kind of our.
I've looked at so many things,
So-
I'll be honest, I'm probably.
But 20.
That was pretty routine way to do it in the
Do you
past,
know how
however, it's
expensive
continued.
this makes a water bill? I know a family that uses 8,000. That's gonna be their bill. That's 400%.
Yes. Sorry.
Was that the one you brought last time?
Responsibility of the county will not
Okay, we probably.
So there is no legal requirement that we're aware of to notify as it goes down. We do publish and we approve budgets. There's a Waterworks District 40 website on the county website that does show quarterly financials.
decide to say anything about.
So I have also talked to the previous analyst. She has had conversations similar to what you've said. There has been discussions, especially as we've gone through these projects and as we've tried to figure out next steps with the CAC that are in some cases no longer here. Is a Prop 218 needed right now? Either your financials were fine. There is a cost associated with the Prop 218. I'm not going to say anything else that any other way on that.
Right.
And then there was also discussions with the CAC regarding, and again, this is in the past, you had ongoing projects. You were trying to purchase the HOA well. I don't know if you were there at the time. And then we needed to see what is the quality of the HOA well. There may be treatment required. And so the discussion at the time was, well, we should wait till after to determine if there's treatment because that's going to be an additional cost to operation and maintenance. There has been discussions. I will say if a Prop 218 was done in 2020, the financials of the system would have been really minimal increase, if any.
Right.
You might have had a different rate structure like what you're seeing now,
Right.
but all these costs that were in the last 4 years, 3 years, those wouldn't have been accounted for, and we would still be looking to, ideally get there
But we
faster.
would
I
have
completely
been
understand.
much closer than we are now.
We would have.
Potentially, but again, your financials were pretty balanced at that time, like five years.
So at the very least, we need what this gentleman brought up. We need an accountability of where every dollar was spent, what was spent on, disclose in as much detail as possible. We need it as soon as possible because we have some.
We have to vote now.
They're literally taking our money and spending it however they want.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it does. This is 2 months worth, that was my.
Yeah.
For that.
So
We're at about 5,500.
$8,000.
So I'm gonna-
Per month. and I use.
We apply for and receive technical assistance from the state to fund the rate study.
So there was so I pay the same bill every month.
The wastewater component of it did. The water component, we got a state assistance for that. Correct, because the state typically only is interested in funding for water stuff.
How do I access the water? Can I
I have to go
access?
back and check, but we can get that.
Can I access the water meter then?
What's that?
Can I read the water meter now too?
Yeah, you should have been able to before as well.
Well, now,
I can lift it up.
can we
Yeah.
lift it up? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to know, if you're getting to 1,000, I might stop.
In the contract that you guys have that says that you're gonna take care of us, is there like fine print that says, you know, we're gonna cover you for a while and we're gonna go negative and you're gonna have to pay us back? Does it say that?
I don't think this situation would be contemplated. There is the,
No, I'm just
the special
asking.
districts law that has
I'm
to be
just asking.
self-sustaining.
And I know that none of this is directed to you as a person or to you as a person, okay? We know that you guys are here to try and appease us at some point and to hear us speak. But right now, we're really upset. We don't understand what's going on. We don't know how we got here.
Yeah.
And you guys are the only ones that we can kind of put this to. But we need to figure out where all this stuff came from and give us a little bit more answers rather than this is what the proposed rate is, and this is what we're gonna do. And then we're gonna go home, we're gonna sleep, and then 2 weeks are gonna go by and we're not gonna hear anything.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that we've been actively working on, since before we met with the CAC last week, we've been actively working on a breakdown of the last 5 years of all of the invoices, every invoice. And every invoice and every field staff charge, every staff charge. And so we have it. But the problem is that some of it is confusing. If you look at it, it's a number. So if you don't translate that into what does this number mean, I could give it to you right now, and when you look at it, you're like, this means something. So like it's like a code.
But
So
some of that
we are working
information
on it.
even would have been nice to say,
Yeah.
we've got this, what we're working on, and maybe we can, discuss this again before this June 24th thing and have some more stuff to turn in before we all decide we're not gonna do
Hey, can we
this.
delay that?
No, unfortunately, no. So I want to summarize a couple things. I know you have a question. I apologize. Give me 1 second. Yeah.
I can't hear. Should we keep one group again?
I guess what's disappointing to me, I was on the day that we voted for the county, because so many people leaving and coming and no one taking care of the situation. So we voted our trust in the county. Even though in 2007, we have consulted, why in God's name have we not steadily increased every few years? Then that way we wouldn't have been in this issue. I cannot imagine anywhere that they did not increase the rates since in 18 years. So to me, that is, my trust is completely gone. And it has been for a long time, and I have orange water. If our water was great, I would feel a little bit better, but we have not had any good water. So we're getting all these wonderful services from the county that we have paid for, they're not happening. So that is negligence. So, I don't understand why it has taken so long for the county to not notify the residents of Shavers Creek. I do feel that we've been neglected, just kicked to the curb. And I'm not real sure, we can't even find an attorney that would help us, because they don't wanna fight the county. So I feel like our hands are tied. We need a fight this problem.
So I want to kind of summarize. I know it's gone a while. I know some people have left. And I want to make sure, I'll be here to answer questions. But where we are right now is we will get a kind of summary of the last 5 years financials. We'll send those to the CAC to distribute throughout the community. We are locked into this process at this point. There will be a board hearing on June 24th where protests will be counted and either a rate will be passed or not passed. Again, I discussed it a little bit, but if a rate is passed, we do intend to immediately turn around and apply for that safer funding to try to subsidize. We will continue to look at other stuff. We do have the well project going on, and we'll continue to work through that to try to get a new well that provides clean and more plentiful water.
You have have any
Those are the main
idea
things.
if you applied for this thing for the, I know it's only the water at this point. How much are you talking about? I mean, you don't give us any idea. Oh,
Yeah.
it's gonna drop everybody's bill by $10.
No, and what I mentioned to the gentleman that was here before, the goal from what I can tell is that the intention would be the state subsidizes the rates down to where it's $150 a month for your water bill.
Okay.
So the amount difference, that's what we'd be claiming against to the state.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
In the event that enough of us protest and new rates don't get adopted, one of the other alternatives was that the state takes over. Isn't the state going to ask a lot of these same questions of how have you allowed them to operate in the right this long?
Yeah.
Why they're going to ask how we got in this situation?
How mismanaged?
Yeah, so
So that's why I don't understand
and
why
we
those answers aren't available to us, but at some point, we're eventually, the county's going to have to answer the same questions the same.
yeah, and the state receivership path is a bit of an unknown, like I mentioned. It's typically much more systems that have completely failed and where everyone's walked away. So I don't know where we fit along that, but I'm sure they would to a certain extent, and to a certain extent they'd be saying, even if all the past stuff is ignored by the state, they'd be looking at what the cost to operate the system is now, which is still a significant increase over where you are.
It is. Nobody argues that we need an increase.
Right.
But 400% is a little much, don't you think?
Yeah, and we're tied with looking at what the system
Okay,
costs.
but you guys need to take responsibility and teach from this.
Which was your question? I'm sorry.
That's fine.
They're still gonna, try to get out of it, they're still gonna, they're still gonna say that we're responsible for that.
Yeah. So people not paying their bills is a lost revenue for the district. People not paying their bills is a lost revenue for the district, and that amount does stay with them. Yeah. So again, they were billed, but then this is the cost to operate the system.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
We can ask. But
And
again,
we
this is where
will,
we're
I
at.
can almost guarantee, we are gonna reject this unless you get rid of the delinquent, that we were not notified, we were put a loan under, and many of us didn't live here to accumulate.
You know what?
We're down.
We will go. Here's,
Order, the county supervisors come out, a lower proposal.
yeah.
Our water committee said, hey, this is what we think we can pay.
The issue there is legally we're not collecting at an appropriate rate. And so that's where you're basically choosing to be an underfunded system.
Trust your budget, you have to show.
We have a water system because the water sucks. So we run extra water through to clean our water system. So we're spending more gallons to clean our self-cleaning thing because we have shitty water. So that's gonna make our bill more because we don't, it's a nightmare. So can you admit that it's a nightmare? I mean,
I understand the system is definitely not where we want it to be.
The price per gallon is outrageous. That's
Understood.
what's going on.
The past and not having a base of 5,000 or
There
so
should be a base.
is gonna be a
Unfortunately, that one,
rejection.
the legal precedent is you shouldn't have a base usage amount.
PG&E gives you a base.
Everybody gives you a base.
Every-
Everybody gives you a base.
Yeah.
In
Yes.
terms of working with a rate consultant that does them throughout the state, those are legally frowned upon at this point in time.
Well, I'd fire them. Everybody gets a base. We can't do much worse. We can't do much worse.
You guys are like, we're just
So
the mess.
I think we're going around a lot of the same questions. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to come talk to us.
I didn't hear the answer.
For your
to-
question, ma'am, there.
Not my question, to the lady's question about what is actually in the water and what it's actually doing to us, you got really quiet at that point.
We've covered
And
that
when,
every meeting.
When I was asking my question, you answered it while I was speaking, so I didn't straight out in your, it's written straight out in the paperwork that came to you. Is it hazardous? What kind of studies have been done? It's not gonna kill you. What, I like those.
They think.
Kidneys, or you're older, or you're under 6 months old. I'm a senior citizen. Okay, so then maybe it's not good for you. It's not. But they can it's nature, and like, look at me. I'm orange. I do not, this is not my color.
Not my color.
So, again, the contaminants are sent as a state requirement. It is manganese, that's what the orange is. It's a secondary contaminant, which means it's not a health and safety one. But that is where the color comes from. So I thank everyone for coming. I'm gonna stay a little bit longer if there's any other questions.
If you could just do your best to help us out and get the information we need and stuff like that. I know you're trying your best, but just, we've got more stuff going on, and the more things that we can have answered, the more things that we're gonna feel better about, and that's just basically it, you know? I mean,
The county has to be accountable.
Chris, I never got an answer on my first question. Did you guys receive money from the California wastewater
The rearages.
rearage program?
We sought it for all of our, it was past due bills.
Right.
So if people, the unfortunate reality of it is if there wasn't past due bills, there wasn't anything to request
Well,
funding.
we were already upside down.
Past due individual bills, not the system as a whole.
I was told for communities, communities in their bylaws for water and wastewater bills, for the communities.
Yeah, the individual bills. Because we went through that process, but it was looking at everyone's past due bills, and that's what they were looking to fund.
Did you get any money from that?
I would need to go back and check.
Can we?
Yeah.
So why can't we have the state come in and take care of it instead of going
That's all we can do.
Donut got new wells, new wells.
I'm